Welcome everyone to this webinar, Leadership in the Post-COVID World. This webinar has been organized by the NAS Professional Development Center. My name is Mohammed Ali. I'm the Program Manager at NAS Professional Development Center. As you all know, COVID-19 has changed the way we work, the way we live, and the way we lead. The world has transferred from bricks to clicks. And right now we're all dealing with a lot of stress. Some of us dealing with it very well, and some of us are trying to do it, try to handle it better. But in either way, it's perfectly fine. Everyone is stressed by what's going on around us these days. And, it does not matter what industry you work in or what organization you work in or what position you hold. This has been a wake-up call for all of us. So we had a choice we had a choice to sit back and do nothing, or we had a choice to honor skills and utilize them to get out of this successfully. So we choose the later one, and let's do what we can from where we are around the world. Let's get ourselves busy into something, building something that is so incredible that we don't have time to worry about. Let's not waste our time on Netflix and news. Let's invest the time in our skills and expertise to help people, organizations, and ourselves, most importantly. So in this continuation, NAS Professional Development Center present the Ask CEO series. In this series, we'll be featuring the global and the national CEOs with you, and we will be sharing the actionable insights that you can implement in your organization for the benefit of yourself and the organization that you work in. Some of the names you might recognize them readily, and some of the names you might not, but rest assured that everyone we will be interviewing will be the leader in their own capacity in the organization that and the industry that we will be featuring in. So ladies and gentlemen, in that context, let me introduce our first guest speaker today. Our first speaker is Jeremy Blain. He's the CEO and founder of the Performance Work International. He's the award-winning business leader, futurist, a new era learning and development professional with over 20 years of experience as a managing director, partner, trainer, coach, and the author of the book called Inner CEO. Jeremy has been recognized by the Stanford Who's Who in 2013. And if I quote the exact words, Jeremy has constantly demonstrated the dedication, vision, skills required to be considered among the best. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the best, Jeremy Blain. Welcome, Jeremy, to the session.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you everybody for attending. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you.
Thank you everyone for joining, and before we move forward, I'll request you to pose your question that you have, that you want to ask Jeremy in the chat box, or if you join us on Facebook, you can write in the comment box. We'll try to answer your question as you move along, or in the end of the session, before we end the session, inshallah. And one thing I assure you, by the end of the session, you will have something like actionable insights actionable takeaways that you can implement in your organization for the benefit of yourself or for the benefit of the organization that you're serving. With that having said, let's move on with the questions. The first question, Jeremy, that I have for you is, we all need leaders with different skills to help us navigate and, to help us navigate and recover from this crisis that we all are facing. What do you think leading an organization in this post-COVID world mean? What are the challenges the leader are facing in this post-COVID world?
It's a very interesting question, and a question on many lips across the world in many organizations. And I would say the first thing is it starts with mindset, and that mindset is at leadership level. Let us not forget that coming into the 2020s, before the pandemic hit us, Many organizations, and I'm including many of your own, I'm sure, were challenged by the transformational challenges that were upon us: digital transformation, workforce shift, new ways of working, emerging practices, etc. Now, many organizations had made progress, but a lot hadn't. So then you multiply that and you add on the pandemic, and suddenly the sense of urgency around transformation started to accelerate. So mindset was really key, and it's a really good example for me as then when you need to do it, suddenly action happens, versus when, well, yes, we'll get to the transformation at some point. There were lots of organizations who were lagging behind, and that's a leadership mindset issue. So there are two things here at play as we then move forward into the post-COVID world and the challenge for leaders. The first is to make sure that our leaders have a 21st century mindset and not a 20th century mindset. A 20th century mindset is, I cannot wait to get back to normal. I can't wait to get back to. The 21st century mindset is, let's embrace the possibilities of the next normal. Let's investigate how we can work, collaborate, communicate, and be better as an organization, serve our customers better by doing things differently and embracing and enabling our organization with the appropriate digital tools. So that is the mindset shift. So coming into this year, and it's a very, very good question that you asked me, because coming into this year, I did a big piece of research across 6 regions within the world around this very topic, around what are the emerging and most important leadership traits for the future. And in order to answer that question specifically, the top 10 challenges and concerns at leadership level coming out of that survey included things like keeping up with the pace of change, which might not be surprising for everybody, attracting and retaining blended talent. So blended talent is not just your permanent workforce, but the future workforce, which will be hybridized. So you'll have an increase of independent workers as well. The next one is around adopting digital, but maintaining a strong human touch. And a very big one fed back from leaders, which was about upskilling myself and ourselves. So we asked leaders and employees the very same question that you've asked me, which is, well, what are the most important traits and skills that leaders need for the decade ahead? And the very first thing that comes out is the rise of human-centered leadership. So greater empathy, greater emotional intelligence, greater human touch, because that's what people needed. But there were slight differences in the top few for leaders and employees. Leaders felt the top skills and traits would be, they need to be more empowering. They need to be more engaging personally, so their personality. They need to be excellent communicators virtually as well as face to face. They need a great deal of emotional intelligence, and they need to collaborate. Compared to what the employees have fed back, that said actually number one for them is to have a more empathetic leader. So empathy-based leader is, and I'm sure many of you are saying at the moment, is, there's a lot being written about this at the moment. And it's by no accident that the countries that have managed the pandemic the best, their leaders, their political leaders, have demonstrated great human skills: empathy, emotional intelligence, relationship building, very engaging. These are the skills that employees are saying are the most important for leaders, Ali.
Perfect, Jeremy. That's you have perfectly identified the characteristics and the quality required for a leader in the 21st century. I really like the concept of mindset of a 21st century, not a 20th. The mindset and the shift in the mindset is what is the need of the hours. I really embrace, and let me share this with the participants who are joining today. The research that Jeremy has mentioned, is kind enough to share that result. And I have a special offer for you in the end of this webinar. For that, you have to stick to the end. We'll make an offer, something really exciting that you will be blessed and you'll be happy to receive it. So stick around to the end, and we will let you know in that. So moving forward, Jeremy, you have identified, you have shared the qualities of the leaders required in the 21st century, and the the mind shift, and the based on the research that you have conducted. My second question is, as a leader of the in the 20th century, what do you think, should we look out for the financial future of the organization or the emotional future of the organization? Because as a leader, that's a very tough challenge that we are dealing with these days.
Well, I'll actually use something similar to answer that. The ex-US general Norman Schwarzkopf, you might remember the name from years ago. He talked about the qualities of a leader being, the two main qualities of a leader being strategy and being character. Kind of similar, yeah. And he said, if you're going to have one, it's character. And I would say that now also that it is the human side of leadership which is trumping the financial. Not you don't ignore the financial, of course. I'm not saying that. But, all of us as business leaders have to look after the bottom line. But there is a real shift in modern day leadership into a balance between purpose and profit.
Okay.
And that purpose is around being not just human centered, but being community centered as well. Being responsible for society as a whole, being protective of the planet in what we do, so how we source, how we do things, etc. And actually, during the pandemic, many leaders in even traditional, let's call them 20th century businesses, started thinking differently. So McKinsey talked about employees, customers, and cash in that order were the most important things for them. So I think it's, from my customers and clients, and particularly my narrative around this is you look after your own first. You need to do that. You then need to look after your customers and find new ways of supporting them because they're going through the same thing that you are. You need to manage the cash, but you can't be driven by the short term around this. Otherwise, for some companies through the pandemic, I understand, of course, that survival is the driver, and I think, you have to put that to one side in answering that question. But moving forward, that balance between purpose and profit means that you're more human, community centered, and priorities are shifting for a leader, I would say.
So my question is, if that's a very insightful, the point that you have mentioned, the purposeful leadership. So if you can share your insights on that as well, that's very close to my heart. The purposeful leadership, and how does that help the leaders during this pandemic when they are navigating the organization and the people they're working with?
It's something that I'm really passionate about as well, and I practice. So I left the corporate world 3 years ago to set up the business that I have now, Performance Works International. And I set it up in a very new way. I've enabled it with technology. I collaborate. And even as a small business, I support the communities within which I operate and which I serve. So 8% of my profits every year go to causes that either I'm passionate about, or my partners or my customers are passionate about. So to answer your question in 3 words, it's about a leader being a force for good. So it's not just about the business. It's about being a force for good for the community, for your customers, for your people, for society, and for the planet.
Very nice. Very nice. So moving forward, that's a very important topic that if somebody has missed out, so the purposeful leadership, purpose versus profit, the leader need to choose among the two, or the balance between the two. Moving forward, Jamie, as we are faced with this new post-COVID world, the new way of working, we are, learning and new ways of working together, working remotely, new ways of communication, forms of communication, methods of communication, you name it. So, before COVID, we had that opportunity to informal talk with the colleagues, over a cup of coffee, or some informal, or for that matter, a smoke break. And you can discuss so many things and inspire a new idea, a new project, and that sort of a stuff. But we are more siloed. We're becoming more siloed, become more isolated due to this COVID thing. We're not organically connected these days. We have very limited access to that informal discussion with our colleagues and our leaders, especially. So how do you think we think of our approach as a leaders and adopt to this new normal world, for effective results as a leaders?
Yeah, and I think you use the right words, the new normal. We're not going back to, as I talked about, we're in this hybrid working is the way forward. So we may return to the office in some way, shape, or form, but we will actually blend that with more remote working. And there is a difference again between those leaders who have embraced this and done it well and those that haven't. So those organizations that have been struggling in the ways that you talk about there have been trying to replicate the office in the online world. It doesn't work. You cannot do that. What happens is you have micromanagement, you have over diarizing, people's calendars are filled with internal meetings because they want to know the numbers, they want a meeting, management need a purpose. So they try and fill their diary by supporting all of their people, but it overwhelms people. It's only when you move past that mentality of office replication and start to think about different ways of working, so asynchronous working versus synchronous working, um, using different techniques, not a 9 to 5 working day, but structuring your working day differently, doing tasks that are not dependent on others to do in the more synchronous way that we have in the offices, these
Right.
kind of practices. Now, one of the issues in many traditional organizations is the people who are doing that well are the employees. So that is an opportunity for bottom up mentoring to help
Hmm.
leaders and managers get on board with this really quickly, because that is where many of the issues we've seen over this last year have been. It's the leadership and management capabilities to pivot to the remote world. And it's really simple stuff. I call it 1 degree off skills from talking face to face, if you like. So
Okay.
very, very simple example is that when we're in an environment like this, if you're a leader and you want to create a connection with your person, get out of the habit of looking at your screen down here and start looking into the camera and start looking into people's eyes and creating that eye contact. It's so simple, but
Okay.
so many people still don't do it. I'm
Absolutely.
looking into the camera now and I can see you down here, but
Yeah.
I will glance occasionally, but I won't do that. And it's also
Absolutely.
remembering that body language is so important. Tone of
Absolutely.
voice is the new super skill
Very
for
nice.
leaders and managers. It's using your voice to modulate, to mobilize, to engage. It's using your eyes and your mouth to smile, because I don't know about you, many of you have attended these before. When videos are on, people look really serious, really serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
It,
can be very off-putting if you're there presenting or you're training or you're leading or you're managing. You're constantly looking for that feedback, and you've got to train yourself not to be impacted by that. So these 1 degree kind of off new skills is a critical skill set for leaders. And these are not soft skills anymore. These are power skills, communication skills, human connection skills, engagement skills are competitive advantage for leaders and managers, because where employees, as we talked about before, can see that the leader is trying, they're demonstrating empathy, they've got a great deal of emotional intelligence. These are the skills which are helping retain staff and attract new people to the organization, because it's a much more enlightened leadership approach. And it's why we called our research the enlightened leader, because that is the real key trait that has come out. More enlightened leaders are more successful.
Very nice. So, very the point that you have identified, Jamie, in your communication is the communication in the post-COVID world has also changed for the leaders, especially the tone of voice. The form of communication that you have, because you're not you're communicating distantly or through digital mediums with your team. And the choice of word that you use can also affect the quality of the relationship with your colleagues, and especially when you're a leader or leading a team. So my question is, how how to be very mindful of these new way of communication, especially the leaders, how they should remain mindful of the choice of words, the tone that they use. And obviously, as you mentioned, in the front of the camera, we're very serious, but in that informal talk that we're missing, the quality of talk we had in that informal discussion is not on the camera or something. So how to break that barrier, and how to go about it? Anything that you would like to suggest?
It's a really good question, and a calm seas never made a seasoned sailor. Let's look at it that way. And leadership and culture are really the boats to sail in right now through the stormy waters of failing fast and failing early. And that is my first piece of advice for leaders, is that we can't be afraid to make some mistakes doing this. We all do it. I do it all the time. On here, it's easy to do. But that's where you also have to do the second thing, which is embrace the informal as well as formal communication. So
Okay.
really, this is a real key trick to get involved. Get used to having informal conversations with your people, with your management, even with your peer level, because that is the human side which is coming out. And unfortunately, some traditional leaders just aren't used to doing it. They're used to having business discussions and strategy discussions. They're not used to spending a bit of time demonstrating empathy, actively listening to their staff. But also, as we said on the kind of the list of the key skills, is empowering others. I believe, and as you know, with my book is about this. I believe strongly that we're entering a new age of empowerment. There is no better opportunity for leaders to drive a bottom-up approach for this, and to secure some reverse mentoring, for example. So not being afraid, to fail first of all, but also bringing in the younger generation who are more used to doing this into the boardroom, into the Zoom room, saying, give me some coaching, give me some feedback about what I can do better on here as a human, as well as a leader, and I think this is an important point. And I would say that, that ability to open every meeting, for example, actually, let me take a step back. Look at every interaction online as an opportunity to create a human touch. Make sure meetings are no more than 1 hour. Make sure that agendas aren't very happy. Make sure that the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the meeting, you just have a conversation with people. You talk about how people are feeling, how they are right now. What are they working on? What help do they need? What support do they need? What are these things on there? And that's really, really important. And gather some feedback afterwards as well. So getting used to, every time you have a meeting or a session or a presentation with your people or with others, is secure some feedback. This is a strength to demonstrate as a leader, and it can only help build those skills that are needed and which come out of the research which I've been talking about before.
Perfect, perfect. I remember one of my boss used to say the test of the leadership is when you ask someone, how are you feeling today or how are you doing today? So you want to know the answer in the real world, not just, the canned response to
Yeah,
it.
be interested.
Yeah, you need to be interested, so especially with that is so much applicable in these days,
Yeah.
when we're distantly working, but we should not be disconnected. So like we're distant but not disconnected, that sort of stuff. So my next question, Jeremy, is, as we move working virtually and remotely, we're working, although many of us were not prepared for it, we have to do it. Some of us are doing it well, and some of us still trying to do it, trying to make it better day by day as we move along. But as a leader, we have a issue of trust. Like, for example, in the prior pre-COVID world, people used to used to sit in the office, so the leader can have a control, can follow up, and then that sort of a stuff. But in the post-COVID world, people are working remotely working. How the leader can have that trust with the team member that he or she is working with, how to remain or fulfill that trust while working and achieving the goals that you have set for the organization.
I think there's again two things here. There is a mindset shift to say that we have huge potential in our people. So
Okay.
if we can empower our people more and realize what we've been talking about, which is, leadership at all levels. For decades we've been talking about it and never got there. Then we can do something really bold. But what that takes is probably the leaders to relook at the culture and the structure of the organization for the modern workplace.
Okay.
2021 thinking, the decade ahead, is that, do we need, for example, a flatter structure? Do we need to take out layers of hierarchy so that we can unleash the potential within our people? And if we're going to do that in the right way, then the trust is built by creating a platform of psychological safety. So psychological safety is coined by a professor called Amy Edmondson in the US, which talks about making it safe for people to step up out of any role, contribute at much broader levels, but also being recognized and rewarded for it, and not managed and supervised for it. So safe, embracing open conversations. This goes for leaders as much as the team. So the foundation is psychological safety, and you can read more online about that, of course. And then kind of a new approach to say, how can we bring the best out of our people? Because in my opinion, post COVID, one CEO is not enough at the moment. The speed of change means that leaders really need to be focused on navigating the future and looking ahead for the organization. They can't be always looking back into the operational side of the business. They need to trust that they've got great managers, but they can unleash the potential of people to do more beyond their job description. That is the real secret. Foundation of psychological safety, a new age of empowerment, and actually everybody working together to drive business health. That is actually what's coined as a growth mindset.
Perfect. I mean, so many insights, Jamie. I'm just loving the insights. Psychological safety in the organization, growth mindset. Um, Perfect. Jamie, one other challenge the leader are facing these days is the culture of the organization. How to keep or maintain the culture of the pre-COVID world, and that every organization has its own culture, way of doing things, and how to transform the exact same culture to the post-COVID world. World. And as a leader, what action or steps need to be taken in order to ensure that you have the same culture, or even trying to make it better as per the requirement of the organization.
Well, as I mentioned, I think leadership and culture, is really the boat to sail in, as you're navigating the future and steering round all of the kind of challenges and obstacles that we've got at the moment. And leadership does need to evolve. We can't think, particularly for traditional businesses that have a legacy, a 20th century legacy. We're often informed by the past, but where we are right now is the world has changed. It's not just that we're working remotely. Our workforce within the next 2 years could be half made up of independent workers. That is a huge cultural shift within the organization. So culture needs to evolve for the modern workplace. It needs to evolve for a more digitized workplace, because everybody, this will be fueled by digital, but also a hybrid way of working and a blended workforce. So different ways of working. So the culture, that underpins that, by very definition, needs to shift. It needs to
Right.
evolve and find a way that it is more inclusive, it's more diverse, and it's more equitable for everybody there, whether they're a permanent employee, an independent worker, a partner, another stakeholder that is there. It also embraces the fact that we are fueled by the adoption of digital. And this is the way that we can do business going forward, is that we
Absolutely.
will embrace the digital tools which are most appropriate for our business, most appropriate for our people, and most efficient and productive in how we work with our customers. This is all actually representing a cultural shift within the organization. So
Very true.
that is the platform to kind of build alongside that psychological safety, because as you build the culture shift and you embrace people in different ways, you unleash them in different ways, then you need to create the safe environment. But that's all part of the culture as well, and how it feels to be an environment like that.
Very nice, Jeremy. Let me ask the participant as well. If you have any question, you can ask in the comment box. We will be answering all your questions, and try to conclude in the time, mentioned time. If you have 15 more minutes to go. Um, if I ask the first question in the comment box, that is, due to COVID, companies were forced to digitize workplace that they were always dreamed of having. But how to structure this move from a company, from a company, your team, and yourself. The structure is not there because it just happened. It was, we were not giving any time to do so, but all the companies were forced to do it. So the company, somebody have done it really well, I must say, but some of them are still struggling with it. But what do you suggest how they can make this move smooth and
Well, what's very interesting is the definition, or the parameters for failure have changed for even kind of the most established companies.
right.
Size is now not the guarantee of success. It is speed and perfection. So
Okay.
speed means you need to be agile, you need to act quickly, and you need to move away from a perfect solution. A 70% solution is good enough as version 1. So you can't afraid to fail first and fail fast and fail early. This is that kind of mentality we were talking about before. Experimentation is your friend at the moment. And it's really quite interesting because that sort of whole mentality of speed. So there's a Chinese very traditional banking and insurance company called Ping An. Jessica Tan, who's the co-CEO, she talks about this. She says a 70% solution can kill us because we're simply not fast enough. We have to change. And this is a cultural shift that relates to what we talked about before within the organization, and a huge mentality shift at leadership level. 20th century thinking is having the perfect solution to launch. 21st century thinking, as we all know, because we all have apps on our phone, how many times do you get an update for your app? Because it's not perfect, but it's
Yes.
normal, right? We accept this.
Normal. Yes.
Exactly, perfectly normal. So that's really key, that speed. Now, if I talk about another couple of traditional companies or industry, luxury is a very traditional company. It's very face to face as well. So,
Right.
your experience, if you go into a Gucci shop or whatever, I don't do this very often. In fact,
Right.
not at all. but I'm informed by faith. It's all part of the experience and the face-to-face touch. The very best luxury companies that have emerged out of this, to name two, would be Prada and Gucci, actually. Gucci had the real issue. The biggest issue and challenge they had was at leadership and management level, but they recognized it. And the
Okay.
leaders and managers held their hand up and said, you know what? We need help from the rest of the organization. We need to generate ideas, but we need also not to lose out with our customer experiences and how we do it. So they very quickly sort of realized that by adopting digital, they realized that they had opportunities to do things that they hadn't even thought of before. So, for example, and I would urge you all to go on to Google Gucci Live and
Gucci.
read about how they have moved their business. So, for example, they invite their top high selling customers to very exclusive online, let's call it kind of Zoom rooms, where somebody's holding a camera, they're showing their products, they have people in there to demonstrate their products on there and show them. But the unique things that they can now do, which they couldn't before, they can bring in special guests from anywhere in the world that they couldn't do with their shops.
Very
They
nice.
they bring in supermodels, they bring in celebrities, and you know what? Their sales increased by over 60% last year.
Oh,
Interesting,
nice.
right?
Very.
Prada
Yeah.
did an amazing thing. So I'm wearing, what am I wearing? I'm wearing Lacoste at the moment, but you can't see it. So I
Yeah,
don't
I
often
can
wear
see
kind
it
of
now.
brands like, but you can see that now, right? You can't
Yeah.
see it now. Okay. What Prada did was something very clever. They said, what we need to do is we need to start to focus on tops more than bottoms. So loungewear for bottoms, but we're not seeing it. But where people see it, we need to top, but we still need our brand important. So look at what Prada have done. You'll see in this triangle here where my collar is, the logo for Prada is right there now. And it's very specifically for this environment.
Yeah.
So even traditional companies and traditional leaders, once they step over that big kind of edge that they can see and acknowledge that we need to do something differently, and I don't have all the answers as a leader, they make very rapid progress, and they're very much more willing to experiment and learn from early failures or build on early successes. And it's been proved by many companies like this. But those companies that have failed and have failed their people, it's not because of their lack of sales, it's because of their lack of leadership.
Right. Perfect. One other question asked by Furqan Shamsi. He said that for post-COVID leadership, either sustaining or developing new culture is the challenge. What to focus on? I think we have already discussed, but if you want to add in something.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of that? You broke up slightly when you said that.
For the post-COVID leadership, either sustaining or developing new culture is the challenge. What to focus on?
Yes, well, actually, it's a very good question, and while we've touched on it, I think the evolution to the new workplace and the modern way of working is not to throw out all of the best practices that we've had before. There are things that we can take from existing best practices that we can use, we can build on, we can evolve. But the development mentality is really key. What do we need to develop from a technology point of view that is appropriate for our business and that enables our teams rather than overwhelms it? So technology is a real danger, because often what leaders have done in their speed is they've looked outside, said, well, this company and that company use this, so that must be good, so we'll put it into our business. But many fail that way because it's not appropriate for their people, for their business. And according to IBM and Forbes, that's why over 80% of digital transformations fail, is because it's not fit for purpose and the implementation and development mindset hasn't been there. So they're pretty good at defining the strategy and the new things that we need to develop, but not great at execution. So that development mindset is one of how do we do it, not what do we do. So that's where the debate has shifted for a leader to the how, not the what.
Very nice, Jamie. My one question is that as you mentioned that we need to embrace the digital transformation, and that is the need of the art, or the business need for the organization. But as we move forward to the digital transformation, we adopt the technologies, and we sort of adopt the systems that are required for the digital transformation. But how does the organization can work on the people side of that digital transformation? That is something a great challenge for the organizations. What's your take on that?
It is my firm belief that the secret to digital transformation is the human touch. The human touch is more important now than it ever has been. So the investment in people, the new knowledge, skills, and behaviors that we need for the modern workplace, how to best use the tools, the collaborative tools, even the move to remote working. Very few organizations put training in place that was formalized to help people navigate Zoom or Teams or Hangouts or whatever they were using. So investing in people, in the human skills as well as the digital skills. So if you like, the human skills actually that enhance that sort of digital enablement as well is really key. Is absolutely critical, because it's not just building the existing skills that we need in the workplace. It's these 1 degree off skills that I was talking about before. And these are all human skills. These are no longer, and I will stress again, these are no longer soft skills. These are the power skills today: collaboration, communication, emotional intelligence, empathy. It's all human skills. It's not the digital which will define the success. It's the human endeavor and element that comes out of it that will.
Very nice, very nice, perfect. Um, One other question that I have from the Furkan Shamsi, he said the performance and present presentation leverage is changing, especially due to remote teams. Uh, any quick tips for leading the remote teams? Any, the engagement and the relationship? We already discussed it, but if you want to add something into it, how to lead the remote teams effectively while
Yeah,
having that same level of trust and performance, that you also ensure the level of performance as a leader in the remote.
that's right. Well, you will all will have noticed this, and I conduct training online, I do meetings online, I do presentations online. If you're anything like me, you realize very quickly that you need to do a lot more preparation these days. Otherwise, it can go wrong pretty quickly in these environments, because you need to manage the technology. So the leader, the leaders don't always have somebody else to manage the technology. So we need to be able to do that very quickly ourselves. So you're multitasking, but also creating those human touch points that we were talking about before. So it is that 1 degree kind of off skill sets that we need are asking ourselves as leader, what are the informal communication things that I can do remotely that will keep me in touch with people without burdening them with something else on their agenda? So it's the informal becomes just as important as the formal. So the use of less formalized tools like WhatsApp or WeChat or Line, whatever the tools of choice are, having brief conversations and sending messages to people and looking for the signs when you haven't heard from your people, or when you see people not contributing online, is that not picking them out in front of everybody else, but making sure that your empathy radar is turned up to number 10, so that you can actually spot these things and listen to people's tone of voice, look at body language, how are they feeling. Start getting used to sending messages to people saying, are you okay? I noticed this. Is there anything that you need help with? Would you like a chat? It's these small things that make the biggest difference to when you're leading and managing remote teams.
Very
When
nice.
you, when you're formalizing the management of remote teams, so coaching sessions and meetings, for example, the first thing is doing exactly that, making time for coaching, move away from performance management and supervision and into a growth mindset. How do I repurpose myself as a manager remotely to support my team and coach them in this new world, help them develop the skills that we're all developing here, and also learn from them as well? It's a two-way street. When I'm managing my meeting, what is the optimal time? The optimum time for a meeting that is emerging is somewhere between 1 hour and 90 minutes, no longer. If it's 2 hours, 3 hours, you lose people. You know
Yeah,
that. But
absolutely.
we still fall into the same trap. And therefore, what's very important on the meetings is the preparation and planning beforehand. So making sure that people get the agenda, people know what their role was in the meeting, and only having 2, maximum 3 agenda points. And don't waste time with reviewing things. Get
Yeah,
to the critical stuff first. Take offline the reviews with the individuals afterwards and with what you want to do, or make it one slide and so on. And don't overwhelm them with slides. Make it a very human kind of angle, and pass ownership for parts of the agenda to your team so that you're not doing it all, so that you can actively listen and observe what's going on and really unleash the power of your people. I think those are
very
some
nice.
things, but of course there are more.
I think, I mean, these insights, that very valuable insights. I think Furkan Shamsi is listening to us, and we'd be happy to have these insights. One other last question. We can take 2 more questions people want to ask, and also running out of time as well. My last question, Jeremy, is that these are the uncertain time. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, how the business landscape is changing, how the world is changing, and how are we gonna, as an organization, as an individual, as a leader of the teams, are gonna react to it. So when the leaders are uncertain, they don't know what to do. How can they bring clarity? As a leader, people expect clarity from you, that you give them a specific instruction and they follow it and they go through it and they just make
Yeah.
it make sure that they deliver or they meet the expectation that you have set for them. As a leader, we we also, yeah, because the leader are also not so clear about what's going to happen and how they can, so how the leader can make sure gain the clarity, gain a different perspective on the different different problem that he or she is facing, and then give this clear instructions to the team. What's
Yeah.
the story?
Well, it's very interesting. McKinsey did a study and they said that by 2025, it's likely that 85% of all existing senior leaders in traditional companies will fail.
Okay.
Now, the reason why they're failing is a lot of what we've talked about at the moment, the lack of execution and implementation of transformation, but also a lack of being able to look inwards and say, you know what, I need to unlearn my old habits. I need to relearn the new knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are really appropriate for the modern workplace. And I need to demonstrate those through the clarity of thought, the clarity of communication, and the honesty and openness that I have with my people. And that honesty and openness means that sometimes I can say to people, you know what, I'm not clear what the next year will look like. But
Okay.
here's 2 or 3 key things that we can do so that we can protect the health of our business while we're starting to look at, the what will come out of the next few months so that I can come back to you. Because
Okay.
some people can genuinely not answer that question. We live in the VUCA world. They're
Yeah.
volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I've recently added a D to that. I call it the VUCAD world, D for distributed, being that we now have distributed teams. So we've got all of these playing. So it's the human side of leadership is why it's coming out, is that people actually are embracing when they see more vulnerable leadership, more openness, and saying, you know what, I don't have all the answers. Help me on this. What are the ideas you have? I think that's great. And that level of clarity is just as important in terms of driving short-term and medium-term direction, even if you can't see the long term. Be open and honest about it, but say, look, for the next 3 months, this is what we're going to do. If
Right.
anybody's not clear on that, you have my number. You can call me directly,
Right. Very nice.
etc. So that human side is what is going to mobilize and engage and help people get the clarity that they need, because your communication will be so much better.
Very nice. Very nice. We're almost on the time, Jamie. We have so many good discussion. I just want to wrap it up and summarize it in a decent manner. And help me, please, if I forget anything. What we have discussed so far is that what does it look like to lead an organization in a post-COVID world, and how the leader can navigate. You have shared really tremendous insights on that. Then we discussed about the remote leadership and how the leader can drive the organization and the culture of the organization, most importantly. And then also we have discussed about the financial future or the emotional future. You have also shed light on the how the leader can create a culture that everyone matters, and what the leader needs to do in order to ensure effective relationship in this more remote work setting. The body language is really important. The tone of voice, the form of communication, the choice of words, the leader need to take care of that. I mean, so many things that we have discussed. So grateful to you for giving us the time. Um, just one last thing before we end this session. What's one out of and we have discussed so many good things that if anybody can apply any one thing out of this discussion, they can benefit themselves and the organization that they work for. But what's one actionable insight that you would recommend to the participants to implement, to implement it for a good results, for a betterment of themselves or the organization they work for? What's
Yep,
one
yep.
out of all these discussions?
Well, in fact, it's one thing, but I'm going to mention two aspects, okay? Because
Sure.
the action requires the first thing, which is mindset. So the
Right.
biggest thing that needs to happen at leadership level is a mindset shift.
Okay.
It says that we have to we have to do things differently, and we have to be differently as leaders. So
Right.
that acceptance first, that I need as a leader to unlearn, relearn, continue to learn, is a great foundation to then move forward. But
Okay.
if there's one thing that leaders need to do is the speed of implementation. That
Okay.
is the real key. And it's that sort of two components. It's speed of action, but having an implementation mindset. So moving away from the what into the how.
Into the how. So we should not be 100% right, but if the speed of change is 80% with the accuracy, it's still fine, right?
That's
So we need
right.
to
Sorry, yes, get comfortable with version 1.
okay, perfect. That's the insight that we need to close on this. Thank you so much, Jamie, for giving us the time. It was such a pleasure having you. Now I would like you to announce the offer that we have committed to the participants that you have for them. Please announce the offer to the
Well, yes,
participants.
well, we've literally just this week we have completed the ebook, which goes behind the research that I talked about that we've done and that I've referred to at times here, called The Enlightened Leader. It was research across about 6 regions, 27 countries this year, around the most important emerging leadership traits and trends that are being adopted by the very best, and some that are not being adopted by the very worst, which we also include there. Lots of examples, lots of interviews, lots of case studies, and we would love to offer that for you as on with our compliments following this. So the guys, will send you a copy of this as soon as this is over, as a thank you for attending, and as something brand new that we can offer you.
Thank you. That's very generous, Jeremy. I'm so grateful. People would definitely love to read the books because this is something based on the research, not a one person perspective, and they will definitely get benefit out of this. We will definitely share these once we get it from you. And thank you, everyone. This was the first webinar with our CEO, Jamie Blain, and we will have so many more in the days to come. Stay tuned to our website. And, as they said, leaders, the follower want to be taken care of and the leader want to take care of. So let's all be the leaders that we all wish we had. So with that note, I thank you, Jamie Blain, for giving us the time. Thank the participants for joining us in this session. And it was such a pleasure having you all with us in this short learning intervention, learning journey together. We'll be inshallah sharing more webinars with all you. Stay tuned to our website. Take care of your good ones and take care of your loved ones. And goodbye. Thank you, Jeremy.
Goodbye.